think we had a little delay there, but we are live. This is Monica Perez, and I'm here with John Bush of the Live Free Now show. If you know anything about freedom cells, you'll know who I'm talking about. So strap on your tanks. We are going deep with a dive master. Hello, John. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Well, I am a little bit of a novice when it comes to the concept of freedom cells. I've heard about them for a long time. I am very interested in anything that's white pilled, any solutions, any preparation for what is promising to be a whole new world post COVID. And I know that you have so many ideas, so many things that you're actually doing, which I love. But I want to kind of back up a little bit and talk a little bit about your background and kind of how you got from being just like a regular person to such an activist, even so far as kind of where you're from and what your education was, if you went to college, what you studied, and how you got all the way from just kind of mainstream to cutting edge, change the world future.
Sure. All right. Well, that's a pretty big question, but I appreciate diving deep on that one. Who doesn't like to dive deep on themselves, I guess? So yeah, I live in Central Texas. I was born and raised in Austin, although recently my fiance and I and our two kiddos moved out to Bastrop, just east of Austin. We got a 10-acre homestead, so I'm very much interested in homesteading, getting off the grid. We have solar panels, all that stuff. But I've been a rebel since high school. In fact, we were organizing protests and rebelling against the tardy table policy they implemented. But I was red pilled in 2002 after watching a documentary by Alex Jones on Austin Cable Access. So, of course, he lives in Austin and he was putting out material way early on a cable access channel 10. But it was 9/11 Road to Tyranny. And I kind of started questioning the official narrative of what happened on September 11th, 2001. And that led me down the rabbit hole of exploring the conspiratorial view of history, globalism, Council on Foreign Relations, Bilderbergs, all this stuff. Of course, the police state and the surveillance state was really ramping up after 9/11 and the war on terror. So I was protesting against that, body scanners, against the wars. I learned about libertarianism through Ron Paul's campaign in 2007, 2008 for president. And after that, we formed a political action committee and started engaging the local and state elected officials to try to create more freedom. Well, we got some stuff passed, like we put privacy policies on fusion centers, these big brother information gathering and intelligence sharing systems. Yeah, that was early on. We were studying those and going around the country, visiting them and doing little events to educate activists about why those are so important and why should we be concerned about that stuff. So we had these privacy policies implemented. Go ahead.
I've been I've been aware of the fusion centers since they were starting to build them. And I used to talk about it. I had a radio show and I used to talk about it and people thought, oh, you're crazy. Then I remember there was one that would literally stop people just for having a Ron Paul, like a campaign for liberty bumper sticker on that was on in their memos. And at the time, the capacity of the fusion center was so huge, like it didn't even seem like it was necessary. Why are they building that? And it was only after that that the total surveillance state really became clear that they wouldn't need just because at the time they built like this one in Utah, they said it would be all of human communications. It had the capacity of containing all human communications for like 100 years. And I remember thinking, why would they need that? But of course, that was in 2010 years, whereas now the amount of information that they have on each and every one of us, they probably couldn't build enough of those fusion centers to get all the information in. And then that they, with voice to text and everything, they can process it. So when you're ahead of thinking about stuff like that, no one really wants to hear it. But when you're, like COVID, I've heard you say, COVID made it very clear that this wasn't theoretical. This was a real plan and they had mechanisms to implement it. And I, for one, think this might have been just like a rehearsal,
Yeah, it's the real deal, and it's accelerated at breakneck speed. And the whole Fusion Centers thing is part of the Total Information Awareness Project from DARPA, right? And that's actually where the speech-to-text thing was developed through DARPA. They had a lot to do with early
and
stuff
Siri
as well.
stands for Stanford Research Institute.
Oh, wow.
Can you
Yeah, it's all
believe that?
tied and interconnected.
No,
Um,
I was
and it's all
shocked
in
when I
plain sight too.
discovered that. Yeah.
Yeah, and everybody seemed like it all seemed like it was far-fetched and people doubted it, but then
Right.
COVID-19 brought it to the forefront and now everyone knows that it's the real deal. And the question still remains, what are we going to do about it? But nonetheless, we got some political reforms passed. We stopped police officers in Central Texas from being trained to do blood withdrawals, where they would have like pulled you over on the side of the road if you were suspected of DWI and withdraw your blood. So we did activism
Wow.
for several years, and we thought that we were doing amazing work for the cause of freedom. But later on, I came to realize that we weren't actually creating more freedom. We were simply slowing the growth of tyranny. And that was not satisfactory for me. I am somebody that desires true, genuine freedom, a voluntary society where people can live their life according to their own beliefs and their values, where they're not subjected to the whims of politicians or some ruling class that thinks they know better for everyone than people know themselves. And so I started exploring the creation of alternative institutions and this idea that if we want to experience freedom in our lives, we ought to take responsibility for creating freedom into our own hands. So we started talking about silver currencies and alternative currencies and visiting farmers markets to try to get the vendors to accept silver coins. I learned about cryptocurrency and knew that that was an opportunity to engage the money system, to send and receive value from long distances, little to no fee, with nothing the government can do to stop it. Got into homesteading, growing our own food, homeschooling, had 2 kiddos. And along the way, I birthed this idea for Freedom Cells, which is a decentralized peer-to-peer mutual aid society. We've since grown to just under 34,000 participants all across the globe. Before COVID, it was like 1,000 people. And then after COVID
Really?
or during COVID, yeah. So that's like everybody's waking up and getting red pilled, and people get overwhelmed initially because they go down these research rabbit holes. And I feel grateful that the work myself, Derek Bros, for example, we collaborate on a lot of projects. The work that we're doing is giving people hope. It's giving folks action items to do, because whenever you engage in action, whenever you start building things, whenever you start growing your own food, pulling your kids out of government school, linking up with like-minded freedom lovers, it helps you to feel more free and less anxious and overwhelmed. So the Freedom Cell Network, it's just all about people getting together, working together on common goals, and becoming more free, becoming more prepared. Yeah. You asked about college. I
So
went to Texas State
yeah.
University and studied
Oh,
political science, and we would pass out 9/11 Truth DVDs. Back in the day, we'd have these giant DVD towers with like 20 slots, and we'd burn 9/11 loose change and all
so
this stuff.
when did you wake up to 9/11? Was it Alex Jones?
Yeah, it was 2002, just right after it happened. And
Wow.
it was challenging being a 9/11 truther back then, because everyone was all patriotic and like, we got to go get the bad guys. And
Yes.
people were not happy to hear about this view, well, which is the truth, really, that the government had something to do with it. It's definitely a lot easier to talk about that now. And in fact, a lot of people, even mainstream people, are like, oh, yeah, I heard about that. But so much
Well,
time has passed. I don't even know if
then
people think about it.
back then it was Democrats who were awake to that. And then when Obama was elected, I think they expected him to out it, and he didn't, and they got disillusioned. But for the most part, I think they shut up about it because they had thought it was a Republican plot that would be outed, and then they realized that there's no difference. The Democrats were going to cover it up too. But yeah, that must have been a tough time to think that. I wasn't awake to it for 10 years after that, and I started looking into the Boston Marathon bombing, and I
Oh,
realized, oh
wow.
my gosh, they do stuff like this.
Yep. It's a classic move, the false flag attack.
So let's talk about the freedom cells. I guess I feel like when I try to get my mind around it, there's just so much there, both from, I think of it as like both vertically and horizontally. It seems to me that just a regular suburban mom like I am could just make connections in my area through freedom cells. Or if I was just ready to bug out, I could physically move to Austin or wherever and connect up one way or another, either by getting land nearby or even trying to work on somebody's land or whatever. Like, I feel like there's many options there. And then also a lot of different, um, a lot of different areas of life are addressed, such as food or educating your kids or, um, I imagine you do everything from how to grow your own food to how to make networks about food, how to educate your own kids, how to work even within a system. It just seems like there's a lot there. It's hard for me to get my whole mind around. Maybe we can talk about how, what's an entry point or what are the options?
Sure, sure. So yeah, it all starts with people either registering on our website, freedomcells.org. Freedom Cells, like cells in the body. It's totally free to register. From there, you can create a username. You have to use an email address. So for folks that are concerned with privacy, they can of course use a fake name and a dummy email address. But you put what skills that you have, what you're hoping to get out of the network. You can identify if you're ready to meet up in person or if you're just looking to meet online. However, we highly encourage meeting in person. That's really what it's all about. You can put if you own land, if you're looking for land, if you're a permaculturist, if you're a technologist, if you're an entrepreneur, if you're a homeschooling parent, and that just helps you to link up with like-minded people in your area. And then you're required to put an address. So we encourage people not to put their home address, rather to put the park down the street or a coffee shop in your area that you're open to meeting at. Then you can look at a member map or a cell map, which is a group of members, a cell, and you can find if there's people in your area. And it's really it's very broad based. And so it's all about post-political solutions, non-political solutions. So we actually prohibit people from using the website to stump for Donald Trump, for example, or their favorite candidate. It's expressly solutions-oriented, apolitical solutions. So if folks, we encourage, it's really critical for people to be growing their own food right now, or at least tapped into local food suppliers. So there's a lot of that going on. There's a lot of parents that are pulling their kids out of government school. There's a lot of folks that are just looking for a community. They feel isolated. They feel like everyone thinks they're crazy and weird. And so they want to hang out with folks where they could dive deep on certain topics without feeling uncomfortable. But at the end of the day, it's very much oriented towards what can we do about the problem? And it goes deep on that as far as what the solutions are. And it's just people working together.
A couple of questions before we go on to some of that. Just like, is there a political bent? Is it more Republican or more libertarian or what? And what's the idea behind the cells, behind the structure of it, the fundamental concept?
Sure. I'd say most people are probably oriented as small L libertarians, meaning they respect people's self-ownership, bodily autonomy, free markets. But there's people that are more left-leaning and care about the environment and care about equality. There's people that are conservatives. There's folks that are Trump supporters. There's folks that are former Trump supporters. It's just a whole hodgepodge of people. But our common values are mutually beneficial voluntary associations, voluntarism, basically, permaculture, growing your own food. Bodily autonomy is a big one because a lot of people woke up based on all the COVID stuff and all the pandemic stuff. So yeah, and again, it's expressly apolitical, but everybody involved cares about freedom. And so we're actually helping to bring people along so they abandon stuff like being a Republican or Democrat altogether, because at the end of the day, we're just human beings. And a lot of the partisan stuff and politics in general forces people to pick a side. So we just want everyone to align.
And it's so fake in that people project onto the leaders of their party that they have these ideological driving forces as the voter does. They think of their politicians rather than the politicians as exploiting one person, one type of ideology over another. They really project onto the politicians that they share the ideology. It's sad, and it's true that, and I mean, it's pure theater in my opinion. I mean, really, including Trump and everything. So I do think it's better to just move away, because it doesn't even matter. Because that's the thing. Like, I feel like the ideology. So my daughter's a little woke, and I'm like, I don't care. Vote however you want. It doesn't matter at all. Like, it doesn't matter at all. Like, it just, the vote, we are not, our ideology, our votes don't influence at all how things are moving. Things are moving towards the technocracy that you cite. And it's, you could have I would rather have a socialist government that operated in good faith, that actually thought, I would never I mean, communism could never operate in any other way but tyranny. But like we have a mixed economy, but like I think back and the idea behind Sweden, they didn't even have two parties. They had this system that basically I think that they operated in good faith, whether it was great or not. I would rather have that than the kind of deception and corruption. And I'm an anarcho-capitalist. Like I don't believe in government at all, but I would rather have one that's operating in good faith than what we have now. And the partisanship just prolongs the agony of this delusion. It really drives me crazy. But yes, so that's the partisanship side. And but what about the structure? What is the
Sure.
cell thing?
Yeah, so it all centers around small group organizing. And the network as a whole, like I said, there's over 34,000 people involved, arguably more that just haven't signed up on the website using Telegram. We're very active on Telegram. I mentioned signing up on freedomcells.org earlier. You can also join them on Telegram. Join us on Telegram. I could share these links with you as well. Or I'm looking at the YouTube live here. So shout out to the folks watching us live. I can share them there.
Oh yeah, we're going to get to some questions. Yeah, we're going to get to some questions at the end. And then I will, for like the audio and stuff, on my website, monicasdeepdives.com, I'll have all the show notes, all the links that you want to give me.
Awesome.
I know you've got some events coming up and real time. People have to probably get on that, but I'll put all of that stuff in there and we can talk about those events towards the end and also take some questions.
Cool. Yeah. So even though there's 34,000 people participating, the network itself is organized horizontally. So in an institution, a company, a social organization, you can be vertically organized, which has to do with hierarchy. One group of people has authority over another group of people, or you can organize a system horizontally in a decentralized fashion. And that's the framework for the Freedom Cell Network. So basically, we encourage people to link up with around 7 other people to form a group of approximately 8. The reason why we choose the number 8 is because there's this research by a guy named John David Garcia and another gentleman named Bob Podolsky. He wrote a book called Flourish, where he proposed creating octalogs, which is a group of 8 people that communicate with one another and work together. 8 people is the optimal number of people for a group to have maximum creativity. And what we're doing is trying to create new systems, create a better world, create a free society. So we encourage people to organize in groups as close to 8 as possible. It could be 6, it could be 10. It really could be whatever you want. The number 8 isn't what's most important. What's most important is linking up with a small cadre of like-minded people where you build trust, you build reciprocity, you link up together, you hang out at least once a month, maybe twice a month or more. You work on the garden projects together, you raise the kids together, you have potlucks together, you engage in mutual aid. If this guy is having a rough time, you go support him, watch the kids. If they need to go to the doctors or they lose their job, you help them find a job or whatever it may be. That's your core inner cadre group. But it doesn't stop there. You then link up with other groups in your area to form a larger group, still decentralized. We call a middle cadre. This is like spread out over a southern part of a city or a city perhaps. And then those larger groups then link up with the rest of the larger groups in the area. Go ahead.
Is that how? So 2 things. One is that structure could operate just with everybody living their own lives in their own houses as they have already. You don't have to pull your kid out of school or whatever. Just you could connect with 6 or 8 or 10 or whatever small group of people on a regular basis and share ideas, best practices, resources, that kind of thing. So there's no like major commitment at that point is one question. And then the other question is, do you actually see, it sounds like you've had very, very rapid growth, and it can surprise you how something in theory doesn't scale quickly. And I'm wondering if your 8 by 8 by 8 kind of idea is roughly, I realize you're saying it doesn't have to be specific, but is it roughly taking shape the way you hoped it would or expected it to, or at least does it take shape in a way that's effective in what you were going for?
Sure. So people get out of the network what they put in. So we're working with people, and the work that I do in Live Free Academy, that's my business. We're doing this webinar coming up. We're partnered with a lot of stuff. I'm trying to teach people how to create freedom. with an emphasis on cryptocurrency, decentralized technology, entrepreneurship, exit and build strategy, exiting systems we disagree with, building alternatives, a lot of homesteading type stuff as well. But people can go as deep as they want. And we're trying through our work and through the Freedom Cell Network. So imagine this is total freedom here on the right side for the podcast audience. We got a spectrum with the right being total freedom and the left being total control, like, loving government, Biden voter. That sounds like something Biden would say. Biden voters here. We're trying to get people to work their way towards as much freedom as possible. But some people have a mortgage. Some people's kids like government school, and the parents don't want to take them away from their friends or the high school band or whatever. That's fine. But the idea is it's extremely valuable to at least start working towards greater freedom, at least start working towards greater self-reliance. And whether you live in a single family neighborhood, where you're part of the Rotary Club, or whether you have a mortgage, your kids go to school, you have a corporate job, you're still going to get immense benefit by being a part of the community, setting up the garden in the backyard, having somebody to go share a beer with or tea to kind of vent about what's going on. It has scaled immensely, and it's probably more rare that a local community actually fully implements 8 groups of 8 and then 8 groups of 64. It's very much spontaneous order. For example, here in Central Texas, we have over 700 participants. That's the Central Texas Meta Cadre, right? 700 people. We organize heavily on Telegram. And then within that Central Texas regional group, there's also a Houston group in Texas, a Dallas-Fort Worth group. But within our Central Texas group, which is where I am, which is where I do most of the organizing, we have a Bastrop County, Fayette County, where I am, out to the east, a Williamson County up north, downtown Austin, South Austin, Hill Country, a West Hill Country, south, there's a San Marcos Hayes group. And so within the larger group, there's smaller regional groups. And then within those smaller, more local groups, there's even smaller groups of the inner cadre that get together. So it's very fluid, and
but
things
it does
are
sound
working.
like it's working like that. It sounds like
people
the people in your
connecting.
local neighborhood, if you wanted to educate your kids together or even do some outside activities together, of course, it'd be best if it's the people who are right near you. But if you're going to have a big 4th of July barbecue, you're going to do that at a kind of central location where everybody comes, that kind of thing.
Exactly. Yeah. So you do more stuff with the local group because they're closer and y'all can be more connected. But every once in a while, we'll get the bigger group together. 60, 70, 80 people show up to these meetings here in Central Texas. But it's very much the case that a lot of people that are close together are working together. And one of the common things is finding other parents and collectively pulling the kids out of government school and building homeschool co-ops. That's one of the most common things that you find taking place. Also, what we call perma blitzes, where you get together and build gardens in somebody's backyard. Yes. And then a couple of weeks later, we go to the other person's place. Lots of cool stuff going on for sure.
So when you did say one of the things that you guys focus on is permaculture. And first of all, I was talking to Jim Gale, and he was saying you don't even need to own, like, because I said I rent my property. It's like, that's all right. We can put stuff in there that'll grow quickly, that doesn't take a long time, and that looks nice. Nobody will object to it. So, but I would, of course, prefer to be able to have a piece of property to grow that stuff on. But you also, so I can see how, that's interesting that it works that way. It's like a barn raising. People will go to your house and help you, and then you can go to their house and help them. But I have heard you also talk about like your own land, and one person or many people who don't have their own land, but come and participate with you, maybe set up an RV or something and, contribute in that way. So it seems to me that there's some communal element of it. Like if you want more, like you said, you get out what you put in. If you want more, if you don't have the land or the job, even kids, but you want to participate in that way, is that like an element of it? And if it is, how do you kind of give and take? Do you do barter? Do you do fiat? Do you do only crypto? Does that cause conflicts? Because then you start getting into how do you decide what somebody's value is worth or what they're getting out of it? Is it at that stage at all, or is it rare to have that kind of communal element?
No, people are buying land together cooperatively. In fact, through Live Free Academy, we just did this giant event called the Exit and Build Land Summit, We had over 450 people in person in Bastrop, Texas, attend. We had
Wow.
Joel Salatin presented, for example. Over 25,000 people registered. It was really a
Wow. That's
popular
awesome.
idea. Yeah, I
That's
knew this was
critical
something that was
mass. That
attractive.
can,
Yeah,
yeah,
it's an idea whose time has come, and the whole thing
yeah.
was to exit the cities, buy land, and build community in the country. Whether you're cooperatively buying land with someone and having an intentional community, basically, or you're buying your own homestead, but you're still building community with the surrounding neighbors, freedom people or not. Like we have a great relationship with our neighbors, and they're definitely freedom people, but they're very conservative in Trump, very strong Christians. For example, they told us like, "You're not taking that shot, are you?" And we're like, "No, of course not." And they're like, "We're not taking it either. You know, we're Christians. It's the mark of the beast." And we're like, "Yeah, these guys know what they're talking about." But that's really popular. And not everybody's doing that. But we have built the network and the tools surrounding the Freedom Cell Network in a way that can help facilitate people either buying land together, or this guy's got land, he's looking for the RVs. For example, we have 10-acre homestead, and there's 2 people that live with us on our property in RVs. And both of them actually work with me here in my business enterprises. So that's very much something that's happening. And then we're also encouraging people to create these counter economies, as Samuel Edward Konkin talked about in the New
Yes.
Libertarian Manifesto,
Yes.
which is agorism. So people are trading amongst one another. People are using silver and barter, and people are using cryptocurrency. We don't have like a uniform, you got to use this or use that. It's basically like very bottom up, whatever people want to use, whatever suits them the best. But a lot of us are very big fans of cryptocurrency for sure.
Right. So, all right. So let's talk about so you've got a lot of things. The exit and build is your philosophy, right? It's just,
It's our
um,
strategy.
it's a strategy.
Hmm.
And so you have the Freedom Cell Network, which we've been talking about, but then you also have Live Free Academy. And I know that you're friends with Richard Grove, and it reminds me a little bit of some of the stuff that he does. So
Sure.
tell us about that. What about that?
Yeah, so Live Free Academy is a business I started last April, and it's all about helping people to create more freedom in their lives. We actually have this Live Free Academy empowerment framework that we do all of our teachings built upon. So it's a four-part framework for success, and the 4 critical pieces for success in any area of your life, whether it's joining the Freedom Cell Network, buying land, having a better relationship with your kids or your significant other or your in-laws, starting a business, building wealth, growing your own food. These 4 elements will help with success in just about anything. The first piece is having the proper mindset. You got to have a sovereign mindset. You got to be in control of your thoughts, leverage the law of attraction to your advantage, believe in yourself, be committed, believe you can get things done. Have appropriate language to yourself. Instead of being your own worst enemy, be a champion for your goals. All right. So that's mindset. And that's the first most important part, because when you believe in yourself and you make a commitment towards something, a vision that you have for your future, everything else is figure outable. You just have to first believe in yourself and make that commitment, and then you'll figure out a way to make it work, which is where the second piece comes in: mindset and then strategy. We talk a lot about strategy, the strategy that we employ with Live Free Academy and the Freedom Cell Network, and also the Greater Resets big conference that we have coming up. I'd like to share about.
Yeah,
We
yeah, I
do
want to hear about
exit
that.
and build. So it's not politics, it's not protest, it's not tearing anything down or yelling at government buildings. It's exit the system, build the alternatives. And so that's what the strategy has a lot to do with. But we also encourage people to become more productive, to set goals, to use strategic planning, to think really clearly about how they're going to get from here, where they're at now, most often dissatisfied with where they're at now, to where they want to go. What steps, what measures, what targets, what goals are going to need to be accomplished in order to get from here to there. So it's mindset, strategy. The third piece is to work with a team of people that share your values and are on the same page as far as the goals they're working on. Greatly increases the chances of your success, of your effectiveness, when you have other people on your team that are helping you to pursue your goals. This could be something like your goal is to become more food independent. So you find the gardeners in your area, you find the farmers in your area, and you start picking their brain. People love to talk about their passion. Maybe you just started homeschooling, so you find the other parents to homeschool with, right? And then the final piece is to take massive action. If we really want to create true freedom, if we really want to overcome this great reset agenda, if we want to reverse lockstep, at least for us, I don't think it's going to be reversed for the masses. They're willingly accepting all this stuff willy-nilly with very little resistance. But there are a lot of people that are resisting, and those are the people that we want to find, work with, and take a lot of action up with. So a lot of people, if you really want to change in your life, if you really want to be prepared for the central bank digital currencies, for the financial reset coming up, if you want to be able to not have to make difficult choices about whether you keep your job and get vaccinated or you have to leave your job that you've been at for the past 10 to 20 years, you got to take massive action. Oftentimes it means giving things up. So maybe less Netflix, less boozing, less football on the weekends, more gardening, more learning entrepreneurship, more learning cryptocurrency, more working towards your goals. So that's the 4-part framework. And we teach everything built upon that: crypto, entrepreneurship, buying land, intentional communities, homesteading, all that stuff.
So let me ask you, and specifically, I have heard you say about creating the cells if there are people who are a little bit, cause trouble. I've heard you talk about this. And then you're also talking about taking action. So if you've got a team, you want to be on the same page and you want to take specific action, that is that moves from the realm of your own mindset to having to really coordinate with other people. And to achieve a goal and take action, you would really have to be, I mean, I even just think about it in a marriage, like you really have to have the same end goal and you have to be on the same page of how to get there. How do you approach that? Is there a blueprint? Do you have the goals written down? You just said there were specifics. I don't know if you would count those as goals about land and crypto and all of that. I mean, how do people get on the same page as their team and make crystal clear that their path and their goals are aligned?
Well, it all starts, I'm a strong believer in the idea that like attracts like, right? So a lot of people that have dramatic people around them are troublemakers. They tend to be a troublemaker themselves, and they end up spending a lot of time pointing the finger. That guy over there is doing this, and they're not carrying their weight, and they're talking about people behind their backs. But meanwhile, they're like, can you believe these people over here? They're talking about people behind their backs, and they're doing the same thing. So the first thing is to just be the best version of yourself and be somebody that focuses so much on getting stuff done. Don't gossip about people. Focus on actions. And when you are that type of person, you'll naturally attract other people like that, and you'll naturally expel or dispel people that are not like that. That's where I would start. But then be very clear about who it is that you want to work with, have very strong boundaries. And the cool thing about the Freedom Cell Network and the work that we're doing is I've learned that because we're so solutions oriented, it's always like, even if somebody just goes on and on about the latest thing about the vaccine, like, I don't know, for some reason, people in our community are obsessed with the vaccine, even though we all agree that we're not going to take it. It's not even a vaccine, right? But they still want to debate till they're blue in the face about graphene oxide, creating transhumanist signals for the 5G or whatever, or now it's snake venom. And have you seen this documentary about the water? And it's like, blah, 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 blah.
I don't go down that stuff at all because it's a lot of work and I don't see the point of it. The only thing that I think is important about that, and again, it's not necessary to really dive into it because I don't think there's anything we can do about it, but you have said rightly, I think that, I don't want to paraphrase you wrong, but that we basically always have faced the specter of totalitarianism. The problem is that now they have the technology to actually implement it, and there's no going back. And I fear that I've always said, like, the nobility of man will shine through. They cannot oppress us forever. The innate freedom will come forward. But the way that the COVID era, including the vaccines and COVID itself, whatever that is it actually is culling the herd and potentially making real genetic changes. I really don't know, but I'm just saying, like, that to me is like in the same realm as, wow, like we've really, if there's been a change in quality of the kind of thing that we're up against, and you can't rely on your kind of traditional, like, it's like a paradigm shift. But yes, I don't go on and on about it because I think that those things are designed, like those videos and stuff are designed to waste a lot of time. Frankly, I think that's what they are there for, because that stuff may all be true, but there's nothing you can do about it. And we can't really tell if it's true unless you're a priest of the electron microscope. You're really not going to be able to get access to the holy writ and all that. So yes, so I can see why people are upset about it. And I do want to talk about your idea of what, your big picture idea of what that is all about, and also like how your solutions address that really big picture thing. Because one thing that I worry about, and your past work with fusion centers and things like that, like really trying to slow down the march of tyranny, is important, because as you're trying to build up your parallel systems or your own land and all that, they do, the big T, they, or just your local government, your state government is going, might implement, animal slaughter things, or water collection rules, or gun control, or whatever, and actually, encroach, Waco you, while not, God forbid, that level, but, Waco makes big news, but there's a million little incursions on your rights and property that can slow you up. So you've got to like stay in the world. And I know you do that. So yes, so I didn't want to interrupt the kind of, what you were saying there about how everybody does kind of naturally converge on the same page. And even if they do get derailed on some of that stuff that makes them crazy, they're still, were you saying they still do work towards those goals that are the actionable action items?
Yeah, well, we're all a little bit crazy, especially in this line of work. But the point I want to make is that because we're so action oriented and solutions oriented, there's less space and less time to debate whether terrain theory or germ theory is true, right? And
Right.
so a lot of people that focus on the research and on the problem, it creates more opportunity to clash with other people. But if it's like germ theory, terrain theory, I don't know what's in the vaccine. I don't know. I'm just going to take good care of my health.
Yeah, we need
And
to
I'm going
build
to keep
French
working.
drains. Like, we don't need to do that.
Yeah, yeah. And so when it comes to like, I do think that there's some value for some people to engage the system for these micro victories, legalizing cannabis, for example, stopping gun control potentially, right? But at the end of the day, these are like these little tiny micro victories. And I think that it's important that we need to advance the ball down the field towards creating infrastructure, creating networks, creating relationships, creating systems that can help us to achieve real freedom. Because if we only do the political thing, which so many people put all of their time into, just the same, if we only do conspiracy research and try to red pill people, then we're simply spinning our wheels. We're recreating cycles. We're taking over government only to be corrupted ourselves. We're just having these small incremental victories. In reality, it's the institution of government that is the problem. So if we want to find freedom from that institution, then we ought to create entirely new systems that have more transparent roots, more decentralized roots, that are less corruptible, that are anti-fragile, more resilient, that are in alignment with our nature as free people. And government just isn't that. So if people feel passionate about, if there's some pet issue, or if there's some big thing they got to stop, maybe they have a chance stopping at the local and state level, that's fine. But don't do that to the detriment of building the alternative systems. I also believe that there's enough of us that are awake. I recognized this back in the 2008 Ron Paul campaign when he got over 1 million votes. And I was like, there's so many people that care about freedom. Now, mind you, a bunch of those were like constitutional conservative types. Many of them were Republicans, but there's a ton of just genuine people that love freedom. And now, especially after all the COVID craziness, there's just so many of us. We're everywhere. Like you join the Freedom Cell website, you may find there's people in your neighborhood. We literally live in a country off a country road, almost in the middle of nowhere. But we have like 4 Freedom Cell people within 5-minute drive of our place in a random obscure country town. So we're out there. I strongly believe that if we simply shift gears, and instead of reacting and fighting the enemy and going into the halls of Congress, if we shift our focus to exiting and building the alternative systems, we very well may find liberty in our lifetime. If not our lifetime, at least we can set the stage for our children to experience that freedom. Or maybe our grandchildren. I don't know. But we got to adopt the long-term picture, the big picture, like you're saying.
So you've got the practical solutions. I know you're big into. I see. I've got some questions here. I want to start
Yeah,
pulling
I
up
saw one.
questions from the people, and
Sure.
I have a little. My thing that here is getting a little glitchy, so I'm going to approach this from a different angle. But so when you like your, why don't we talk a little bit while I'm pulling this up about the seminars that are coming up? I know you have something on
Oh
the
yeah,
20th. I
sure.
know you have something on the
Uh-huh.
29th.
Yeah, so we're doing a free webinar on the 20th. And if folks can't join us live, ideally you join us live, but there'll be a replay window after that. But you can sign up at livefree.academy/reset webinar. That's livefree.academy/reset webinar. And basically, we're going to be breaking down my analysis based on 22 years of research now. My analysis, 22, 2002 to 2020, 20 years of research. Based on 20 years of research, my analysis of this whole financial reset that's taking place. I've been studying it for a good long time. It's most definitely heated up, especially with the advent of the Great Reset. We're going to talk about inflation. We're going to talk about currency collapse. We're going to talk about a new monetary order. What's the new Bretton Woods going to look like? But more importantly, I'm going to provide an analysis so we can have a firm understanding of where things are going. But as I encourage people to do, let us not research the conspiracy for the sake of researching the conspiracy or feeling like we're all high and mighty because we know things, but let us research the conspiracy so we can learn how to navigate around it, how to insulate ourselves from it, how to opt out of it. So most of the webinar will be focused on solutions, specifically how can we prepare ourselves for this financial reset. And then even more specifically, I'll be sharing some of my insights on what I believe to be critical investments. It's not the traditional stuff. It's moving away from that. It's reevaluating our wants and needs. It's reevaluating what's most important to us. And at the end of the day, it's going to really narrow down on being able to provide for ourselves food, water, shelter. And at the end of the day, one of the most valuable things we can do, besides investing in ourselves, is investing in the community that we have around us, because you can have all the wealth in the world as far as money goes, but if crap hits the fan, the ones and zeros in your bank account aren't going to mean crap if the banking system collapses or
Have you read
reset.
the novel The Mandibles?
I haven't. No,
Have you heard of it?
I haven't. What's it all about?
Somebody bought it for me like 5 years ago, and recently I heard people talking about it. It's just I never read fiction. I mean, like once every 5, it's been sitting on my desk for 5 years. But it's about what happens if the dollar truly collapses. And it's just, I mean, I'm like halfway through it, and all it is
Cool.
this litany of all the things that go wrong and how people just can't get food. They have no place to live except for the one guy who had gone and gotten a little bit of land and started to associate with like-minded people. I'm sure I'm not going
Nice.
to like the ending, but
Ah,
Iron Web by Larkin Rose was kind of had that element too. But there are
sure,
ways to
sure.
like get your mind around what needs to be done and what the vulnerabilities are. And I think after COVID, we can see that these theoretical vulnerabilities, and I feel the same way about 9/11. Like I was always libertarian. I said our government has a conflict of interest with us because we buy security from them, and they are definitely not going to want us to feel secure. And the contrary, and 9/11 did exactly that, played into their hands in that way, which is, a cui bono. And then similarly, COVID makes it clear that they hate us, and they are happier for it benefits them when we suffer. And so all those elements that you're talking about as preparation, I think, are really critical. And I agree with you. It doesn't have to be all at once. Doesn't You don't have to be 100% water and food self-sufficient. And anyway, so keep going.
Yeah. So we'll focus mostly on solutions and what people can do. We will talk about financial solutions, especially for folks that have spent their whole life building up wealth, having these retirement accounts. Like, I can't imagine how nerve-wracking it's got to be to see your retirement account, your future sustenance drop 20, 30, 40%. So we're going to talk about how folks that have built wealth can shift that wealth and protect that wealth and even grow that wealth. But then we'll also talk about how folks on the come up can prepare themselves, can position themselves to not be at the whims of these master manipulators and central bankers. And then finally, it's going to come down to a lot of really practical solutions having to do with community and building these tight connections and getting prepared for the worst. So hopefully we can thrive through it all and come out better on the other side. And again, people can register absolutely for free at livefree.academy/reset webinar, livefree.academy/reset webinar.
I'm going to put that here on the screen, and hopefully you can tell me that it's right.
It is. I love StreamYard. It's a great tool.
Yeah,
sure.
it is great. Although I had to get in it twice because I could not get those comments up from here. Something wrong with my internet. But so there are, you said there were a couple of things that you're doing, one on the 20th and one on the 29th. Which is which? Were you telling me?
Oh, so the free webinar is on the 20th. But during the webinar, we'll also share an opportunity to join us for this 4-hour masterclass that I'm going to be doing on the 29th. Yeah, we haven't launched that just yet, but that's really going to go super in depth as far as building on the teachings that we do in the webinar. But whether people join us for the masterclass or not, the webinar is totally free, and folks are going to get a lot of value out of it.
And what about the Greater Reset? What's that all about?
Yeah, so my good friend Derek Bros and I, who's one of my associates, we work together on a lot of projects. He's the co-founder of the Freedom Cell Network. I birthed the idea back in the day, but he's the one that gave it wings and actually helped to build it into a full-on functioning global network, which is really cool. So we collaborate on all sorts of stuff. And when we started learning about the Great Reset, we're like, okay, this is trouble. We are really concerned about where this is going. It's very sophisticated. It's really strong marketing, tons of stakeholders involved. What are we going to do about it? We saw a bunch of people are just researching and putting together articles and videos like people tend to do. But we said, what if we put together a counter event? So the World Economic Forum, this group of oligarchs led by Klaus Schwab, this diabolical super villain.
Dr. Evil.
It's textbook. It's kind of weird, actually. It's like
it is kind of weird. I literally keep thinking in my mind that he has one of those naked cats, but I don't think he actually does. But I can't think of him without thinking of that.
You never know. But anyway, we're doing this event called the Greater Reset. So they have the Great Reset. They're trying to create more centralization, more control, more manipulation, more surveillance. So we're like, let's do an event called the Greater Reset. And we're going to promote voluntarism, decentralization, transparency, anti-corruption, right? And so we're bringing together folks. We originally, it's called an activation. It's not a conference or a festival. It's an activation because the whole purpose is to get people activated, to get people inspired and empowered to take action. So this will be the 4th iteration. We're calling it the Greater Reset 4 co-creation. And we're going to be bringing together 35 or so solutionaries, solutions-oriented thinkers, visionaries, entrepreneurs, activists, doers, permaculturalists, builders. They're going to present their ideas, and the whole idea is to empower the people that are watching. Anybody could watch for free online. We're going to stream it on our website, thegreaterreset.org. It's not like one of those summit things where you sign up for free, but you only get a small window and then you got to buy the extra stuff. It's totally free for anyone to watch. All of the videos from the past 3 are all available on our website, thegreaterreset.org. So anyone can watch anywhere in the world, but we really are encouraging folks to join us in person. I'm hosting the event in Central Texas, here in our hometown of Bastrop, Texas. And Derek Bros and Ramiro Romani, he's also our collaborator on the Greater Reset and the Freedom Cell Network. They are hosting the event in Morelia, Mexico. So it'll be simulcast from Mexico and Texas. A third of the speakers will be in Texas. A third of the speakers will be in Mexico. A third of them will be online. And it's this really cool experience because, I've done a lot of virtual in-person hybrid events, which is a challenge in and of itself. But broadcasting from 2 locations and online, it's just really cool what we put together. And we've heard from countless people that it's like changed their lives, especially in the thick of all the COVID stuff. People are feeling isolated, alone. They just got red pilled and then they become black pilled, which is where you go so deep down the rabbit hole. You feel apathetic and you're like, what are we going to do? We're totally screwed. We've heard from so many people that that's the place that they were at. And because they heard all this opportunities, heard people really creating a difference in the world and changing their lives, they got inspired and felt like, well, if they can do it, I can do it. So for folks that are feeling a little overwhelmed and anxious about the future, you got to check this event out.
The thing about what you're doing, about the solutions, about the, trying to be autonomous, having more or less, to the extent that you can, educating your own kids, access to food, just taking control. A lot of that does smack of spirituality in this, at least in this one way, where the goal is important, the goal to save the world or change the world or save your soul or whatever, but the path, the journey in itself is liberating. And that black pill is such a temptation. But if you are engaging, I mean, I've read like literal studies in the mainstream that say gardening is as effective as Prozac in relieving depression. So the actual path to be just day to day living autonomously and having those kind of skills and that journey. I'm a big fan of Uncle Ted, but not his actions, but his book. I don't want to bring that in, but to be away from the technology, to be out of the grid, and to actually live that kind of a life is in itself quite rewarding. So I don't even think part of the path is the goal. Sometimes I think.
Yeah,
So,
for sure. The
yeah.
destination's the journey, and the journey's the destination. And you're right. I've been doing this for a long time, and I myself have had this sense of overwhelm. And in fact, the most overwhelmed about the New World Order I ever was is when I constantly listened to Alex Jones back in college. Every day, I thought I was so much smarter than everybody because I knew about the New World Order. Meanwhile, I was miserable, annoying the crap out of my parents and my family, trying to shove a red pill down their throat. Folks got to remember in our world, if you're an activist, you want to wake people up. Remember, it was Morpheus that gave Neo the choice between the red and the blue pill. We can't force the red pill down someone's throat. They have to choose to receive that message and totally change their entire worldview about the world and the lies they've been fed. And when you try to shove it down someone's throat, you only turn them off to it. That which you resist persists. But just the same, I've realized that the best antidote to overwhelm and anxiety about the future is action. Not only action, but back to the framework I created, the
Mindset's
strategy.
first. Yeah, right.
Mindset's first. But then when you come up with a plan, you all of a sudden feel a great weight lifted off your shoulders because now you're stepping into a position of control. You have control over your life. You're making decisions, you're making choices, you're acting according to your own goals, your own aims, and it takes you out of this reactionary paradigm where you're focused on the politics of the day, the latest crisis, or whatever. So for folks that are feeling overwhelmed, because believe me, I do these one-on-one consultations, and a significant number of the consultations, it's me basically talking somebody off a ledge. They're ready to pack up their whole life. They're ready to leave their wife. Their whole family is in disarray because they get so obsessed with the New World Order that it breaks relationships. So people, in order to overcome...
Well, the vax is doing that for sure.
It is, but it doesn't have to,
No.
Like people make choices, and we're only making things worse by word vomiting all over somebody or like telling them that they're dumb or ignorant or you're going to die now. Right.
Right.
But my point is, when people are feeling overwhelmed, the antidote to that overwhelm is to have a plan and a path and start taking little steps and getting mini victories, building momentum towards a better life. That's when you step into a space of empowerment and you're no longer a victim.
Yeah, I'm a big believer in that for sure. But we have a couple of questions, and I don't know if you're ready to go into
Sure.
that, and also the crypto stuff. Question. This is, I think, from Stella. They control the power of the grid, so don't they ultimately control crypto? I'm a crypto noob.
Sure. So I actually did a webinar several months ago. People can check it out at buildwealthoptout.com. buildwealthoptout.com. And I spent a significant time on that webinar overcoming objections to crypto. This is one of them. I don't believe that they control the entire grid, and also let us not convey omnipotence on they, trademark they. They are not all powerful. They do not control everything. There are competing factions within they. There's corporate interests. There's straight up Anglo-American establishment types. There's Rockefeller types. There's Committee of 300 old school stuff. It's all just like this whole hodgepodge.
That was John Coleman.
Yeah, the old school. And then the Club of Rome, of course, a lot of their work's being carried on.
And what about
by the World
Putin?
Economic Forum.
How does Putin fold into that, the competing interests? I'm just curious.
I think he's his own power center. I don't think he's part of the plan. I didn't think Trump was part of the plan either, although I don't think Trump's our savior in the least bit. So I just want to throw that out there. Like, they don't
Yeah,
have
go ahead.
everything under
Right.
control. Everything's not going according to their plan. They wanted to have vaccine passports all over the world, but that
That's a
basically
good
didn't
point.
stick just about anywhere. Not to
Right.
mention, barely anybody's taken the booster. A huge chunk of nurses and doctors refused the vaccine to the point of losing their job. 30%, arguably more, they're just manipulating the numbers. 30% of the people didn't take any vaccine at all. So their stuff is, they're not as strong as people think they are. But when it comes to crypto, if they shut the grid down or turn off power to one part of the world or whatever, or an EMP happens, first of all, your cryptocurrency stash is going to be the least of your troubles. If you're not prepared, if you don't have off-grid technology, we have solar panels, for example. So even if they try to shut the grid off or whatever, we'll still be able to run a cryptocurrency node or run a miner or send transactions, right? But if the electricity gets turned off in an area, you don't really care about crypto. You care about survival. But it's only inevitable when the electricity comes back on or when the internet comes back on, your crypto doesn't go away. You just tap back into the blockchain. Of course, the blockchain is the decentralized distributed network that hosts the blockchain, that hosts the ledger that carries all the transactions of who sent what to whom. So the beauty of this cryptocurrency technology is it's very, very, very anti-fragile and resilient. The Bitcoin, for example, Bitcoin was the first cryptocurrency. It's the blockchain, again, the collection of all the transactions. Every time you send a transaction, that transaction is registered on every single blockchain node throughout the world. Okay, so if somebody tries to fraudulently say that they sent this much or they actually received this much, it doesn't jive with all the other computer nodes. And so they kick that out, right? That's how we can have this decentralized consensus. But because there's over 15,000 nodes and 15,000 computers and people running these computers, if it gets shut down in one part of the world or if one country makes it illegal, the network still exists. And if you lose access to the internet or electricity in your part of the world, once you get access once again, inevitably you will, you'll still be able to tap back into the network, and that entry on the blockchain that shows you owning this cryptocurrency, it doesn't go away. You just tap back into it.
So you probably agree that you should have a little bit of backup, like have cash, have some gold,
Yeah,
and
there's some crypto people that are like, crypto is going to save us all. It's the panacea,
yeah.
right? It's like the be all end all. No, I'm a crypto guy. Lately, I've been changing my pitch to, the webinar is called Build Wealth, Opt Out. But now, because Bitcoin is so volatile and it's been volatile, I only encourage folks that actually have significant wealth to invest significant amounts in Bitcoin. If you ask
You got to
yourself questions
diversify.
like, yeah, if you ask yourself questions like, what should I do with all this money? We just sold a rental house or whatever, then yeah, put a good chunk in. But if you're on the come up and you're struggling financially, the number one thing to invest in is yourself, your ability to produce more income, your ability to provide value to other people by learning new skills. But we all, no matter what financial position we may find ourselves in fact, no matter how skeptical you may be of cryptocurrency, we all need to learn to use it, especially privacy coins like Monero, because cryptocurrency, decentralized blockchains, and especially privacy coins like Monero are going to be the only way we can continue to do business with one another online outside of their control CBDC grid. We should still barter in person. We should still have local currencies. We should still invest in gold and silver, trade silver coins for vegetables at the farmer's market or whatever. But when it comes to doing business online, if we want to send value to another part of the country or world, we're going to want to learn to use crypto, because that's going to be the only way we can do it and operate outside of their CBDC paradigm. So for the folks that think Bitcoin's part of this New World Order scheme, it's rather ironic, because in fact, the cryptocurrency is the technology that's going to have them avoid that central bank digital currency.
Right. So Stella had a quick follow-up, and then some people have some questions about the freedom cells. She said the corporations ultimately are controlled by them, are they not? But I'm with you. I think that it's I think I call it the corpo governmental continuum. I feel like they are all on the same page, but it does appear that there's some at the highest levels, some competition. So I don't know if you want to comment on that. I think we answered that.
Well, as an
So
anti-state
yeah.
guy, corporations are an institution of the state. You can't have corporations without
Good
government.
point.
So there's necessarily some corruption there because people get to shield themselves from liability, right?
Yes.
So I don't think all the corporations are on the same page, but most of the mega corporations are now bought
Yes.
into this ESG
Yeah.
nonsense, impact investing stuff. So it's definitely something to look out
Yeah.
for. But again, it's,
They're
it's not a monolithic thing.
yeah.
It's convoluted and there's differences and there's gray and people are out to leverage their space spot against someone else, and it's not this whole powerful thing. They're very weak, in fact.
There are outsized players like BlackRock and World Economic Forum who do work hand in hand, and a bunch of the companies on the Dow. But there
Big
is
time.
also some resistance. I mean, I even see the Wall Street Journal saying stuff about BlackRock, which is just amazing because I think they have a dispute with how BlackRock is approaching their investments in China, and there is definitely, you can see where where the wheels are not super greased, and I
Yeah.
always think that's where the hope lies, that it isn't totally controlled. But okay, so Kat Duckness says, regarding the cells, what if you're not near anyone? I know she lives in the woods. And what if you're not near anyone or your cell is a dud? Like, what if it's not super local for you? Is there anything a person can do under those circumstances?
Yeah, I can share a YouTube link with you real quick of a video that I did teaching people some strategies on how to more effectively recruit people. But at the end of the day, if there's not a lot of people in your area, then we need you to step up as a leader and find more people to work with. So, I've been doing activism and for 20 years. I've been doing entrepreneurship for 13 years now. And I got to tell you, I got 2 successful businesses right now. We're starting a third, but I can count the number. I need more than one hand to count the number of failed enterprises that aren't around anymore. So really, at the end of the day, one of the biggest pieces of success is persistence. So if you create a cell, if you host a meetup, nobody shows up, maybe one person shows up, you got to keep at it. You got to keep going. Rome wasn't built in a day. I don't know if that's the best analogy for our community because Rome was pretty authoritarian, but nonetheless, it takes time, it takes effort, it takes energy. So keep those meetups going. Try to change what you do. So if it's a meetup at a coffee shop, nobody shows, maybe host a meetup at the bowling alley, maybe at a concert. Maybe we're going to get together for a drink. Maybe we're going to go to the farmer's market. Maybe we're going to go to the shooting range together. Keep going, keep at it. Don't just rely on the website or our community. Go to the farmers markets and try to strike up conversations about food shortages. Go to the Libertarian Party meetup, the conservative meetups, the prepper groups, the homeschool groups. Do whatever you can to find people that think like we do. Strike up conversations. You got to get comfortable with the uncomfortable. Step out of your comfort
Yeah.
zone. If you're an introvert, you got to start being an extrovert, at least on the weekends or whatever. But we need folks to take responsibility for growing the network in your area. And I'll share a video with you. You could drop it there in the comments if you
Yeah.
would, where I talk about how
That'd
to
be
do
great.
just that. Yeah. But yeah, I'm ready for any other question if we got more.
Okay, so no, I think we're gonna wrap up. I'm hoping to put that. If you give me something, I didn't see it. Where'd
Yeah, I
you
got
put
it right there. I just shared it in the private chat.
Okay, there it is. I will do it.
Sure. Oh, it looks
Scroll
like you got a
back.
question there about Freedom Cells
Okay.
being anonymous.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. Sorry about that.
Yeah. So it's a great question. Is Freedom Cells anonymous? I think participants would be concerned with labeling themselves as rule breakers if the authorities come looking for scapegoats. So I've been doing this for 20 years, as I said, and I've been in jail twice for activism,
Oh
but I've
my
never been.
God.
Yeah, it was nonsense. One of them, I fought it in court and was found not guilty. That was pretty cool.
Good.
But they're not coming to round 34,000 people up. What we're doing is not illegal in any sense of the term. We're just growing food, pulling kids out of government schools. Eventually, we want to grow our ranks till we have 100,000, 1 million people, and we can literally declare independence. Maybe if we're no longer paying this tax or complying with that regulation, it'll be illegal. But in the meantime, it's just free people getting together. And honestly, just like the expression when it comes to guns, it's better to have a gun and not need it than to need a gun and not have it. It's better to be a part of the Freedom Cell network and not need to rely on that network to get your back than to need a network of people and not have it. And at the end of the day, some people think it's risky to join our network. I would argue it's riskier not to join our network, because you're going to be all alone. And the lone wolf is a lot more vulnerable than the guy that's standing together with 700 people that live in his city that are showing up and hanging out together.
Well, the COVID thing really showed how important it was. I mean, I scrambled to buy dried food. I mean, it was pathetic. And I grew up in a house where there was dried, but my garage, there was no car, and it was just cases of dried food. I was completely raised by someone who lived in the fear of the Red Scare, but this actually happened. Like, this was a real problem to not, we were so vulnerable. And then they actually deliberately, in my opinion, messed with the supply chain. So even I personally think that there's enough redundancies, enough surplus, enough stability in the system that they didn't have to, none of that. They did it all on purpose, in my opinion. But the fact that they can, and they did, and that they got away with it is a really powerful lesson to just be prepared. And I feel like it's irresponsible as a parent to not be prepared in some of these ways and not have the network, not have a community.
I'm with you.
For sure. So, wow, that's excellent. So just as a wrap, if you would tell people, the best places to get a kind of overview of your stuff and what's coming soon. I put some links up. I'll put all the links in the show notes on monicasdeepdives.com. But just for the people who are listening on the podcast, where are the best highlights of how to communicate with you and how to see what you're doing?
Yeah, so we have a daily email newsletter. I'd love for folks to join. It's totally free. We send all sorts of great stories and insights. It's livefree.academy/email, livefree.academy/email. And then again, we're doing this webinar. It's coming up. It's going to be incredible. We're really going to break stuff down as far as how we can opt out of the financial reset. People can get that at livefree.academy/reset webinar. livefree.academy/reset webinar. Of course, join us in the Freedom Cells Network. It's totally free to sign up. You'll be tapped into a network of goal and solutions-oriented people. freedomcells.org, cells as in CELLS.org. And lastly, I highly encourage people to join us in person for the Greater Reset, taking place January 18th through the 22nd. Check us out in Bastrop, Texas. We'll have an incredible event with 400 plus people, or join Derek and Ramiro down in Mexico. A lot of international folks go down there because Mexico has little to no vaccine and COVID requirements. And folks can join them down in Morelia. So check that out at thegreaterreset.org. And of course, you can watch online, sign up for our newsletter on there as well to stay in touch with all the cool stuff that we're doing. We got Del Bigtree's going to be speaking, Mark Moss, Jack Spirko, Christian Westbrook, the Ice Age Farmer.
Yes, I've spoken to him.
Catherine Austin Fitz, who people are really excited to hear. So it's going to be one heck of an event. And again, we're very unique because we're totally 125,000% focused on solutions.
That's so awesome. Well, that is very white-pilled. It has been a real pleasure talking to you, John Bush. And I hope people will avail themselves of all your resources, start with livefree.academy. That's a good place to start. freedomcells.org. That's a great place to start. And listen to the show. Put all the show notes in. You have been listening to Deep Dives with Monica Perez.